from Guitar World. And if you're wondering if Guitar World looks a little different today, it does, because I'm here at Marshall's New York City headquarters to check out their brand new Marshall 1959 modified head over here on my left. There's a lot to get to, so let's dig in. It sounds amazing. Now, Marshall introduced two new modified series heads. One, of course, is the 1959 modified, which I have over here on my left, and then the JCM 800 over here on my right. Now, of course, both of these are iconic amps and probably their most popular amps that most players know and love. And if you're thinking that they look like they're modified by some amp tech in New York City, you'd be wrong. These are actually modified by Marshall. They got all these particular mods that many players have asked for, which now they are giving to you. And the best thing about them is that you can go back to the original sound of those heads, or if you want to sculpt and tone shape your own particular mod sound, you can do that as well. Of course, Marshall has had a long history of being able to modify their own amps for their artists. But this time around, with the 1959 hand-wired, as well as the JCM 800 modified, they are giving that modifications to you. Of course, the funny thing for me is that I've had Marshalls throughout my career. I've had Silver Jubilees, JVMs, JMPs, Super Leads, and even a Super Bass, vintage ones from the 70s. And the crazy thing for me is, of course, is like seeing these same switches that I had on some of those Marshalls to sculpt my own tone. But that's what's great about these brand new series of modified amplifiers. They did all those things for you, and now I'll be able to do that while still having a true Marshall. So let's talk about each of those particular modifications and how they work. So let's talk about the 1959 modified's front panel. It has all the familiar controls of a Plexi. It has the presence, bass, middle, treble, dual channel volumes for volume 1 and volume 2. The first thing you'll notice is a master volume underneath the volume 1 input. Now, this is great because now you can drive the channel 1 volume at a much lower volume so you don't disturb the neighbors or your parents. So you get all that warmth and tone as well as the gain that most Marshall players are looking for at a lower volume or at least a manageable volume. Next to the master volume, you'll notice a bright cap switch, which you can disengage or turn on the bright cap. Now, the great thing, of course, about this is when you're playing at a lower volume, you may want to disengage the bright switch so you get a lot more warmth and not so much brightness. And also, if you're turning up the amplifier, you may want to engage that because then the more gain you introduce, slowly the bright cap starts to disappear from the circuit. So it works both ways. You can introduce a little more brightness or you can take it out completely. Next to the bright cap switch is the on-off clipping switch. Off leaves you with the original Plexi circuit, and then turning the clipping switch on brings you to the next mini toggle, which are drive 1 and 2. Now, what's interesting about this is drive 1 is a diode clipping. So basically more of that compressed, tighter sound, almost as if you are adding almost like an overdrive pedal on it. And then switching over to drive 2, you get the transistor clipping. So with that, I noticed right away is that the volume drops a bit. So you can compensate that by just turning up, of course, the master volume just a little bit more. So that's really cool. Basically, you have two sets of drive tones, which work fantastic on this particular 1959 modified head. All right, let's hear what this amp can do. I'm going to start letting you hear how each of those switches work. I brought here with me my 58 Les Paul here, pretty much stock from 2002, but better combination than a Les Paul and a Marshall. So let's begin how I've set my EQ. I pretty much have presence dialed back, the bass a little before noon, middle cranked a bit, and treble up. Volume 1, which is I'm in the first channel over here, I have a pretty almost near breakup and Also, I have the master volume, of course, working here at a modest volume, so I'm not killing anybody. Bright cap is off, and I'll let you hear that first, so you'll hear how the bright cap works. So this is basically the sound I have using both pickups here. Now, of course, you can hear how nice and warm that sounds. And now if I pull in the bright cap, you'll hear it gets really bright. Of course, that's pretty much close to what a standard Plexi would sound like, of course, with the bright cap engaged. Then, of course, just bring it back. It warms things up a great deal. So that's that. And now let's bring up the volume on volume 1 so you get to hear the range, so you can get some pretty great crunchy tones. So I'm going to pull it up about 6. And then bring it all the way up to 10. Now, of course, I add the bright cap back in. You'll hear how loud it gets. Gets a little more focused and tighter on the mid-range. But you'll also hear it's not as strident as when I had it backed off. As I mentioned before, the bright cap starts to disappear a bit as you turn it up. And gets more in that sweet spot. And then let's turn that off. With the bright cap off, I'm going to turn on the clipping mode over here, because I've had this with the clipping mode off this whole time and none of the modifications engaged. So let's have some fun in here when you introduce the diode and the transistor drives into the circuit, how great they sound. So now I've turned it on. Right now I'm in drive mode 1, which is a diode clipping. So it's a little bit more compressed, not as much gain as the transistor on 2. So let's take a listen to that. So keep in mind, of course, I have volume 1 cranked. I'm in diode clipping. I have the bright cap off. So let's hear the difference between the two when I turn the bright cap back in. It'll start to bring in the mid-range even more focus because I have the channel 1 volume cranked. That's with the bright on. Let's bring it off. So pretty wicked sounding. Let's switch over to the second clipping stage, which is a transistor clipping stage. You'll hear the volume drop automatically. Take a listen real quick. Now I'm going to compensate that by bringing up the master volume here. So now you'll hear this has a little bit more gain. It's a smoother sound, and I'll add the bright cap in as well, which will probably tighten it up just even more. So let's take a listen. Now with the bright cap. Of course, with this, you can also do a jump channel, which I'm going to do right now. I'll start with just letting you hear volume 2 to begin with, which of course is this typical, kind of the normal channel on a Plexi. And as you turn it up, keep in mind I have the bright cap switch turned on. And now what I'll do is, let me jump the channel really quick so you get a little best of both worlds. So here I am jumping the channels. I'm basically doing what so many players throughout the years have done, where you basically get the best of both worlds from both the brighter tone from volume 1, channel 1, and then the darker tone on volume 2. The great thing, of course, about these 1959 modified is you really don't need to jump the channel, but if you want to do that, you can. And keep in mind I have the bright cap on here. So now here by adding that, I'm bringing just a little bit more body to the sound. The other great thing about this, even with the clipping stages on, this particular head is so touch responsive. So I can even get more of that clean tone by just rolling off the knob and then, get all these shades of rhythm, lead. Let me demonstrate that really quick. This is transistor clipping, and I just turned it up a bit. Yeah, this thing sounds great. So as you just heard, this Marshall 1959 modified is a whole bunch of fun. It's such a blast to play through this, and I'm sure when many players get their hands on this, they're really gonna love this brand new Marshall 1959 modified. Again, it has all that tone shaping capability, all the things that I kind of look for where I want my Marshall to sound like. And if you ask me, I have a tough time deciding which clipping stage I like even more. It's just, everything about it is fantastic. And I think you're going to see a lot of this on the road as well and in a lot of session players' hands. So if you're like me, you're going to want one. Definitely check it out.